We are going to kill your God. I am not referring to the one from the church. I am referring to the one you built with your own hands. The god of likes, the idol of toxic productivity, the empty promise that your life must have a shiny and packaged purpose. Friedrich Nietzsche already killed him for you more than a century ago. And from his grave, he hates you for trying to resurrect him every morning when you open Instagram. Your anxiety is not a chemical failure. Your emptiness is not an error. They are the exact symptoms, predicted in detail, of intoxicating yourself with the crumbs of meaning of an era that Nietzsche saw coming. They have sold you a cheap heaven, made of consumption goals and external validation, and you are drowning in it. You feel like you are running on a treadmill towards nowhere because every success tastes like cardboard. What if I told you that this philosopher, this man history, painted as a mustachioed madman, was not writing theory? He was writing the diagnostic manual of your digital existential crisis. He did it because his life was a raw version of your private hell. Pain without reason, rejection, the betrayal of everything supposed to be sacred. What comes next is not a history class. This is an emergency intervention, and you only have half an hour to pay close attention. And either you leave here with the tools to forge your own meaning, or you return to the fog. Okay, the choice, at least for this time, is yours. Forget the black and white photos, the dusty marble bust. To understand why Nietzsche nailed the diagnosis of our century, you need to know patient zero. Not the philosopher, the man. His life is not a biography with dates. It is an autopsy manual of everything that makes us sick. An existential horror movie where the villains are not monsters. They are the very same forces that harass you today. Toxic heritage, the prison of the normal, the heartbreak that defines you, and the chronic pain that does not kill you. It forges you. Villain number 1, the broken sword. His father was a pastor, a good man, a pillar of the community, a representative of God on earth. And he died young, leaving a child named Friedrich with a brutal lesson branded by fire. The most sacred promises break. The ultimate authority figure, the one who knows everything, is fragile and disappears. The first idol, that of the father and the protecting God, crashes against the ground. Therefore, the seed of the most radical mistrust is planted. No external belief system, however luminous it seems, is immune to collapse. Sound familiar? Change God for the system, the meritocracy, the dream that if you work hard, everything will turn out well. The first crack in the world of appearances. This takes him to the academy, to philology. There is villain number 2, the prison of normality. Imagine a mind that is a hammer, an instrument to demolish and forge, locked in a library where one is only allowed to caress books with white gloves. The academy was that, a factory of dust, of consensus, of dead, agreed-upon truths. But his brain could not stand the incense of the temple. What he saw as a battlefield of interpretations, they saw as a graveyard of facts. Therefore, he develops a visceral hatred, not towards knowledge, but towards herd thinking, towards the intellectual cowardice that prefers the comfort of a shared lie to the vertigo of a solitary truth. Here the future hammer is born. Sound familiar? The perfect curriculum vitae versus the call of your will. The rules of the professional game versus the heretical idea burning in your head. Nietzsche chose heresy, and he was expelled from respectability, his first act of freedom. And then arrives the villain that distorts everything, the affective desert, Lou Salome. The intellectually brilliant, free woman who rejects it. It is not romantic gossip, it is the key to a philosophical trauma, because Nietzsche was not a resentful incel. He was a man who offered his most brilliant mind, his project of a new humanity, and was rejected in favor of the polite mediocrity of a friend. Therefore, here, compassion, romantic love, all that sentimental territory becomes suspicious. Not out of misogyny, but out of a ruthless analysis. Affection, pity are often the most sophisticated tools for domestication. To say, get down from there, be normal, be like us. Lou did not break his heart. She demonstrated to him how human bonds can be the most effective chain for the free spirit. Does it hurt? Imagine projecting your vital masterpiece and being told, it is too much. We have all been there, which leads to the final villain and master, the iron guest, the migraines that prostrate him for days, the sight that fades, the body that is a constant betrayal, a dungeon of chronic pain. The majority would have given up, would have written pamphlets of self-pity. But here the Nietzschean alchemical magic happens, but turns into, therefore. Pain does not destroy him, it becomes his workshop, because in the darkness of the room, without stimuli, without distractions, the mind becomes his only landscape. He learns to think from suffering, not in spite of it. And from this physical hell springs the most radical idea, the definitive hack, amor fati, the love of fate. Not stoic resignation, not endure. It is this that is killing me, is also building me. It is mine. And if I had to live this life infinitely, with all its pain, I would choose it again, because it is the only one that turns me into who I am. His illness was not an obstacle to his philosophy. It was the forger of his philosophy. Do you see the pattern? Each tragedy is not an isolated fact. It is the hammer blow that forges the next conceptual tool. The death of the father forges the hammer for the idols. The academic prison forges the contempt for the herd. The heartbreak forges the suspicion towards effective chains. The illness forges the transvaluation of suffering. This is not an interesting life. It is a high-pressure laboratory where the antidote for modern nihilism is cooked. And now, with the man naked before you, with his wounds exposed, you are ready. Because now you can hold his ideas and feel that they are still hot, beating with the blood of the one who lived them before writing them. They are not theories, they are scars turned into wisdom, and you have the same wounds. You only lack the hammer to forge them into power. That hammer comes now. Forget the man. Now take his hammer, because the biography was the prologue, the warm-up. What comes now is philosophical combat training. Nietzsche's ideas are not comfort. They are not interesting perspectives. They are scalpels designed for open-heart surgery on your consciousness. And we are going to start with the deepest incision, the one that hurts precisely because it touches the wound you did not even know you had open and festering. The one that explains why, in the midst of material abundance, you feel that emptiness that swallows everything. Concept 1. God is dead. The echo of silence in your apartment. Listen to the phrase again, but take out the theatrical drama, the halo of biblical prophecy. Gott ist tot. It is a clinical finding. Nietzsche is not an evangelist announcing the final judgment. He is the pathologist signing the death certificate of the most important patient in the cultural history of the West. And he does it with the coldness of one who knows that, starting from this report, everything is going to get complicated. Who was that God who died? Let us reduce him to his real function, stripping away the mythological cape. He was the central operating system of reality, installed by default in the Western brain for centuries. An omnipresent software that answered in an authoritative manner the questions of existential kernel. What is good? What is truth? What is the ultimate purpose of my suffering? What happens when this body shuts down? Denise. Your value, your place in the cosmos, your moral code, came preloaded. One did not have to program. Only follow the divine user manual. But then slowly, errors started to appear in the code. Science showed flagrant inconsistencies. The Enlightenment executed the program Critique of Pure Reason, and the system started throwing blue screens. Doubt was no longer a sin. It was an intellectual imperative. And thus, without an official announcement, without a general blackout, the operating system became corrupted, became slow, useless, and finally, it closed. God is dead, and we, with our science, our criticism, our modernity, are the murderers. Now transfer this metaphorical death to your concrete life at 3:17 in the morning, when the last scroll of TikTok fails to anesthetize the buzzing in your chest. It means you are navigating reality with a GPS that only contains maps from 1850. Your identity crisis, that who am I really, that emerges after university, after the first job, after the breakup, is not a generational whim. It is the echo of the silence left by the blackout of the central operating system. Nihilism is not a sophisticated philosophy you choose in university. It is the default state, the blue screen that appears when you remove the software that gave meaning and do not install anything new in its place. Therefore, your anxiety is not a manufacturing defect, an isolated chemical imbalance, although it manifests that way. It is pure logic. It is the biologically coherent response of an animal, the Homo sapiens, that evolved to seek patterns, causalities, and meanings in a hostile world, and that suddenly is thrown into a cosmologically indifferent universe that no longer offers it a meaning packaged and ready to use. Nietzsche is shouting at you from the 19th century. Stop looking for the map in the drawers. The map self-destructed. What you feel in your solar plexus is not a disease. It is the truth becoming flesh in you. The abyss is not only out there, it is watching you from within. And the question now is not why, but and now what? This realization brings us to the first existential crossroads, to the first great decision that you do not take once, but define with every small action, with every unexamined thought of your daily life. It is the bifurcation between two types of nihilism, and in that choice, your dignity or your future slavery is at stake. Concept 2. Passive nihilism versus active nihilism. The trap of it does not matter and the flame of freedom. Here is the dialectical trap where 99% of people get stuck, rot spiritually, and die without having lived. They believe that nihilism is a single thing, the void, the hopelessness, the meaninglessness, and they install themselves there, believing they are profound for recognizing it. But Nietzsche, like a good surgeon, makes a fine cut and discovers that there are two nihilisms, and one of them is the cancer, the other, although painful, is the chemotherapy. Passive nihilism is the undisputed king of our era, the cultural air we breathe. It is elegant resignation, dressed as cool. It is the philosophical shrug. What for? It is all the same. It is the system is rotten and cannot be changed. It is complaint as identity, the chronic lament that becomes the background melody of your life. In its purest modern manifestation, it is the infinite scrolling on social media, a passive consumption of indignation, of others' dramas, of prefabricated ideologies, of a rage that is not channeled into action, but stagnates and turns into cynicism. It is waiting, with the weak hope of a beggar, for something or someone external to come and inject meaning into you. The perfect partner, the spiritual guru, the savior political party, the job with purpose, the miracle therapy. It is life as a spectator of your own defeat, justified with an, I cannot do anything, the world is like this. Does it sound familiar? Of course it sounds familiar. It is the default cultural drug, the opium of postmodern peoples. It gives you a reason not to move, impotence. But, and this but, is an abyss that separates the slave from the potential free one. Nietzsche discovers in the darkest bottom of the void something different, active nihilism. And this is not a final state, a place to stay. It is a starting point, a brutal tool. Active nihilism does not resign itself to, it does not matter. It takes it as raw material. It accepts the destruction of old values not as a tragedy, but as the first and most necessary creative act. It is the everything is the same, therefore I have the absolute, terrifying, and glorious freedom to decide what I am going to give value to. It is the radical draft the child who is going to create spoke of. Visualize it like this, concretely. Your psyche is a house you inherited. It is stuffed with horrendous, uncomfortable, dusty furniture you did not choose. The shoulds of your parents. The definition of success of your culture. The prefabricated dreams sold in advertisements. The herd morality of your tribe. Passive nihilism sits on the ugliest sofa, looks at the disaster around him, sighs deeply, complains about the dust to his friends, and waits, with pathetic faith, for someone, a savior, a leader, the market, to come someday to redecorate for him. Active nihilism, instead, enters the house, goes to the garage, takes out a baseball bat and a trash dumpster, and starts breaking. He breaks the sideboard of, you have to start a family. He breaks the lamp of, money brings happiness. He shatters the painting of, be humble and do not stand out. He does not do it out of childish vandalism. He does it to make space, because he knows with the artist's certainty that before being able to create your own style, your authentic design, you need the void, the pure potentiality, the blank canvas. Destruction is not the end. It is the condition of possibility for creation. Therefore, every time you internally break an inherited should, I must have a child at 30. Success is a management position. Life must be happy and comfortable. You are not being negative or a rebel without a cause. You are exercising active nihilism. You are using the hammer. The mortal danger, Nietzsche warns, is staying stuck in the destruction phase. Because only destroying without creating anything new turns you into a cynical monster, into an eternal teenager whose only identity is being against. It is the parody of the lion who only knows how to roar no. Destruction has a single, worthy purpose, clearing the ground to build, and to build something worthwhile, something that does not collapse at the first wind of doubt. You need to connect with the most fundamental driving force of your being. No, it is not worldly ambition. It is something infinitely deeper and biological. Concept 3. The will to power, the engine they did not teach you to turn on. This is the most hijacked, most vilified, and most misunderstood term in all Western philosophy. We associate it instantly with fascism, with the ruthless ambition of tyrants, with the desire to dominate and trample on others. And it is just the opposite. It is a grotesque perversion of the concept. The will to power, Wille zur Macht, is not wanting power over. It is not the dictator's drive. It is the intrinsic, expansive force of life itself. It is the biological, spiritual impulse that makes a seed crack the concrete to seek the light. It is the energy that leads you to learn to play the piano at 40 years old, to run 1 more kilometer when you can no longer go on, to master a language, to solve a complex problem, not for a diploma or applause, but for the pure sensation of internal expansion, of overcoming a previous limit. It is your most basic source code to become more, to grow, to overcome yourself. It is the tendency of every living organism to not only preserve itself, but to increase, to intensify its existence. Think of a video game you are passionate about. Do you play solely to see the end credits? Or is there something else? The drive to improve your skill, to unlock new capabilities of your character, to overcome that boss that killed you 10 times, to feel that your dominion over the game system expands. That drive, that wanting more, that is not greed but growth. That is the will to power in its purest and most playful state. You do not compete against other players. You compete against your own limits, against the version of you from yesterday. Now ask yourself this brutal question, the one Nietzsche would put in a mirror for you. Is your current life, your day-to-day, an expression of your will to power? Or is it its systematic denial and domestication? Analyze it without mercy. Is your entrepreneurship, your career ascent, just a sophisticated machine to generate money and buy accepted status symbols, the luxury car, the house in the premium zone, the Instagrammable vacations. That is not will to power. That is spiritualized capitalism. It is will to social approval. It is will to economic security. It is the expansive and wild force of life, perfectly domesticated, put in a golden cage, and trained to spin in a wheel that validates the herd's values. You have channeled a raging river to move someone else's Ferris wheel. The authentic Nietzschean question, the one that burns in the throat, is this: what would you create? Towards what would you propel yourself? Into what would you turn if absolutely no one in the world were to give you a like, public recognition, a salary raise, a single cent, or a pat on the back in exchange? If your action were invisible to the world, would you keep doing it? There, in that pure motivation, naked of all external reward, stripped of the other's gaze, is where your authentic and singular will to power resides. It is the engine that will keep running when all the spotlights have gone out, when the borrowed meaning has vanished. It is your existential emergency generator. And this concept is the golden bridge, because when you start to exercise that authentic will to power, when you create and act from that internal place, you are taking the definitive qualitative leap. You are ceasing to be the reactive animal that responds to herd stimuli, to become the author, the legislator, the artist of your own existence. You are ready for the metamorphosis. Concept 4. The Superman, Übermensch. The metamorphosis waiting in. You forget Superman, the infallible comic book hero. Forget the superhuman and unreachable genius. The Übermensch is something much more radical, much more earthly, and, therefore, much more terrifying and hopeful. It is not a being that is born, it is a process one arrives at. A direction, not a destination. Nietzsche describes it as a metamorphosis of the spirit. A transformation in 3 crucial acts, 3 skins you must shed. First act, the camel. This is the starting point for almost everyone. The camel is the beast of burden par excellence. It lowers its neck docilely and accepts carrying the heaviest weights thrown upon it. What load? Inherited values. You must be humble. You must be useful and productive. You must seek stability. You must please your parents. You must follow tradition. The camel does not question. It carries. It assumes social, familial, religious shoulds as if they were natural laws. It is the phase of unconscious obedience, of uncritical acceptance. We are all born and socialized as camels, and a huge part of humanity dies comfortably or uncomfortably in this phase, with backs bent by weights they never chose. But a moment arrives, often after a crisis, a pain, a revelation, when the load becomes unbearable. It is not just heavy, it is alien. The spirit then rebels, and it performs the second transformation. It becomes the lion. The lion roars a sacred, powerful, liberating no. No to the old gods. No to the musts. No to the herd morality. No to the expectations that suffocate. The lion is the spirit of fierce criticism, of necessary denial, of the creative destruction of idols. It is active nihilism, made beast, with claws and fangs. Its supreme strength is that of saying no, of winning through that rejection, the freedom to destroy the old tables of values. His war cry is freedom to destroy. But, and this is the great but, the abyss where rebels without a cause crash. The lion has a fatal limitation. It cannot create new values. Its power is negative, reactive. It can clear the ground, but it cannot build the new dwelling. Much of contemporary rebellion, the pure deconstructionist cynicism, the political anger without a project, the permanent criticism without a proposal, irony as a shield, stays stuck, glorious and sterile in the lion phase. It is spectacular to roar, but in the end, if you only roar, you are only noise. This brings us to the third and crucial transformation, which few reach because it requires the courage of innocence. The child. Innocence is the child, and forgetting, a new beginning, a game, a wheel rolling out of its own center. a first movement, a sacred yes saying. The child does not carry like the camel, nor deny like the lion. The child creates, plays, invents worlds, rules, meanings, without the crushing weight of why, of what for, of according to whom. The child is the Superman in potential. It is not a superhuman being with magical powers. It is the human being who has overcome his slave humanity to others' values to reach his sovereign humanity. It is the artist of his own life, the legislator who, having accepted that there is no divine script or pre-established map, writes his own script with tragic joy. It is the one who looks at the cosmic void and, instead of crying, says, "What a wonderful space to build my castle." The Superman is not a fixed goal you reach and relax. It is a constant direction, a compass pointing towards perpetual self-creation. Every time you make a decision, not because it is what is done or it is the right thing according to others, but because it is an authentic expression of your deepest and examined will, you are taking a step as a child, a step towards the Übermensch. Every time you create a new value for yourself. For me, creative freedom is worth more than security. My word is my temple, integrity my only God. You are being the child who invents a new game and plays seriously. And it is here, at this point of sovereign creation, where all pains, all errors, all the chaos of your past acquire a new meaning. They are no longer accidents to regret, but necessary raw material. This leads us to the final hack, the alchemical master trick Nietzsche learned in his own physical Calvary. Concept 5. Amor fati. The most radical yes that exists. This is the incandescent core of everything, the jewel forged in the forge of his migraine, his solitude, and his chronic pain. Amor fati. Love your fate. Do not confuse it with stoic resignation. It is not the endure, bear, this too shall pass of stoicism, which can be a form of passive denial. Amor fati is infinitely more radical, more active, and more liberating. It is a joyful affirmation. Imagine your life is a novel written by a demented and brilliant author. In this novel, every chapter, even the darkest and most painful ones, every paragraph, every word, even those spelling betrayal, failure, illness, loss, is absolutely necessary for the plot to be coherent, for the main character, you, to acquire the depth, the scars, and the strength that define him. Amor fati is reading that novel of your life, and, instead of wishing with anguish to be able to rewrite the tragic chapters, loving each of those pages with an almost religious fervor, because you understand that removing a single line, softening a single blow, would be destroying the artistic integrity of the work. It would be erasing a fundamental part of who you are. It would be an act of existential self-censorship. It is the definitive save file of your video game. In an epic game, if you could only save one, would you save the perfect, predictable game without errors, where you won easily, or would you save, with pride, the legendary game, full of crushing defeats, of catastrophic tactical errors, of moments when you were on the verge of quitting, but also of unexpected victories, of brutal learnings that turned you into a master? Amor fati is choosing to save, with a definitive click, this exact game you are playing now, with all its bugs, its horrible graphics, its impossible boss, and its uncertain ending. And doing it with a yes so resounding it echoes in your bones. Your most painful romantic breakup, your most humiliating firing, your year of paralyzing anxiety, the error you believe will haunt you forever, the betrayal that marked you. Nietzsche does not tell you, get over that. He tells you something harder and more powerful. Do not get over it, love it, not because that event in itself was good or desirable, but because it is inextricably yours. It is the specific fire that melted you and allowed you to remold the metal of your character into a stronger, more unique form. Without that specific fire, you would be another person. You would be, almost certainly, a flimsier, more naive, more generic person. This is not cheap positive thinking. It is not the law of attraction. It is the hardest and truest existential mathematics. Your life is the equation: A, your genes, your childhood, plus B, your traumas and errors, plus C, your choices and achievements, equals you, the unique being you are in this instant. If you deny or try to mentally eliminate variable B, the equation breaks. You cease to be you. You turn into a ghost, into a sweetened and false version of yourself. Amor fati is embracing the complete equation, with all its variables, even the negative ones. It is saying with breath shortened by emotion, I want my life, just as it was, just as it is, with all its pain and its glory, to repeat again and again, eternally, in an endless cycle. And I want it not out of masochism, but because it is the only life that is mine. Therefore, your Nietzschean mission is not to seek a life free of pain. That is the illusion of the camel wanting a comfortable stable. Your mission is to find the meaning and forge your unique strength within the pain itself, and use that pain, transformed as high-octane fuel for your will to power, as the construction material for your path towards the Superman. The void, God is dead, is no longer your enemy. It is your infinite playground. Suffering is no longer your executioner. It is your personal workshop, your spiritual gym. Nietzsche did not give you final answers, nor a new dogma to replace the old one. He gave you forging tools to withstand the devastating and liberating fact that there are no given final answers, and to create your own with the tragic and solemn joy of a child who, after an earthquake, plays at building a new world with the rubble of the heavens that collapsed. So, what remains? A desolate message? An intellectual fend for yourself? No. It would be a betrayal of Nietzsche and of you, because the philosopher of the hammer was not a nihilist. He was the doctor diagnosing the disease to be able to prescribe the toughest cure, the only one that works. We have gone through the diagnosis, God is dead, the fever, passive nihilism, the antibiotic, active nihilism, the reconstitution of the immune system, will to power, and the vision of a superior health, Superman, amor fati. But the philosophy that stays in theory is for Nietzsche cowardice. It has to get down into the mud. Into your mud at 7:17 on any given Tuesday. Therefore, here is the hack, the bridge between the scorching idea and the concrete habit. It is not a decalogue. It is a morning ritual of existential war. Tomorrow when the alarm sounds, before touching the phone, before consulting your anxiety, as if it were the weather forecast, do this. In the gloom, formulate the definitive Nietzschean question. What would I do today? How would I live this day if I had to live it again and again for all eternity? This is not the seize the day of influencers. It is infinitely heavier and lighter at the same time. It is the logic of amor fati applied to the immediate. It is not about doing something epic every day. It is about every small act, the way you have breakfast, the word you say to a colleague, the work you do, being imbued with such sovereign intentionality that you are willing to sign for its eternal repetition. Are you going to waste 2 hours on networks out of inertia? Ask yourself, would I sign to repeat this loss of energy an infinite number of times? The answer will guide you, with more strength than any discipline, towards your authentic acts. Identify and kill an inherited idol, however small, before noon. The lion phase is not a one-time event. It is a maintenance practice. Today, choose one. The idol of total availability. Do not answer that email outside your work hours, even if it is expected. The idol of toxic positivity. Allow yourself to be angry or sad without justifying yourself. The idol of productivity as supreme value. Throw away 20 minutes deliberately, looking out the window without purpose. Every toppled idol is a brick you remove from your camel's prison. It is active nihilism in daily homeopathic doses. Find a moment for pure expansion. Search for 15 minutes to do something that has no exchange value, only internal growth value. Learn 3 chords on a guitar. Memorize 5 words of a new language. Try to solve a mental puzzle. Do not publish it. Do not monetize it. Do not optimize it. Just do it for the sensation that your mind or your body expands a millimeter. There you are, feeding your authentic will to power, decoupled from external approval. It is the muscle of the Superman. This is not self-help. It is self-legislation. It is taking the philosopher's tools and turning them into the lever with which you move your daily reality. Nietzsche does not promise you happiness. He promises you something better, ownership over your life. And ownership hurts because it entails total responsibility. Now the end. And here comes my proposal, but not the one you expect. I am not going to beg you to give a like or subscribe. That would be turning this call to sovereignty into a cheap transaction. It would be pure contradiction. Instead, I launch you a gamified challenge, a trial by fire to see if this really sank in, or was just an intellectual spectacle. The theory is in your head. Now it is time for public action, the first act of value creation. Go to the comments and write with total honesty a single thing. The idol I killed today is. It can be big, the belief that I must be perfect, or small, the habit of checking notifications upon waking up. But it has to be concrete. It has to be yours. This is the first act of active nihilism in community. Not to form a new herd, but to see the chains that others are also breaking. To find courage in the synchrony of our hammer blows. The Superman is not a lone wolf. He is a creator who sometimes needs the echo of other creators to make sure he is not delirious. Do you dare? Or are you going to close this tab and return to the noise with a more interesting idea in your head, but without a single crack in your walls? And for those who do, for those who feel that today they killed something old and breathed the cold air of newly won freedom, this is not the end. It is just the end of the tutorial. You have killed God. You have looked into the abyss. You have put the hammer on your belt. But building is much harder than destroying. Now comes the monumental question. How is a new temple built when the old blueprints have burned? How are values created that do not collapse at the first gale of doubt? How does one live in a world without absolute truths, without going crazy or cynical? The next step is the most dangerous because it requires the tools of the philosopher most uncomfortable for the system, the one who dissected how power not only oppresses us, but builds us ourselves from within. If Nietzsche gave you the hammer to break your chains, Michel Foucault is going to give you the microscope to see how those links fused with your own skin and the scalpel to separate them without dying in the attempt. Because the most effective prison has no bars. It has your own consent. See you there in the next trench.